Her hands trembled as she laid the last $10 bill on the counter, whispering, "Please. I just need my inhaler." The pharmacist's pity stung worse than her tightening chest, until a voice behind her said, low and commanding, "Put it on my account." She turned, and the billionaire everyone feared met the one woman who wasn't afraid to say no to him. "Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you are hooked in and you are ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you are watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The city was still waking when Ava Bennett stepped off the bus, lungs rasping like sandpaper. A chill mist hovered over the cracked pavement outside St. Mary's Hospital, wrapping itself around her as she clutched her tote bag and hurried through the glass doors. The clock above the reception desk read 6:02 a.m. She was late again. The receptionist's uniform, faded blue polyester, smelled faintly of antiseptic. She smiled at the first patient who shuffled in, pretending not to notice the burn in her chest. It was always worst in the mornings. She reached into her bag for her inhaler. Empty. The click of the canister echoed like a verdict. She'd stretch the medication for another day if she could. Rent was due. The electric bill still unpaid. The pharmacy across the street would have to wait until lunch break. $10, exactly what she had left after bus fare, might not be enough, but maybe they'd understand. Maybe. Across town, Damien Hale ended another board meeting with a curt nod. The floor-to-ceiling windows of the Hale Biotech Tower threw the morning light across his face, turning his sharp features to glass. He was the kind of man people lowered their voices around, tall, deliberate, with a calm that made silence obey him. He didn't look like a man who'd slept 2 hours, or one who'd spent half the night rereading an old text thread that ended with, "You never came." That voice still haunted him, his sister Lily's, 10 years gone, asthma-ridden and 17. He straightened his cufflinks and dismissed the board. "Run the numbers again," he said, the phrase he used when emotion threatened to show. Control, that was his inhaler. By noon, St. Mary's cafeteria smelled of burnt coffee and boiled rice. Ava sat in the corner counting coins under the table. $10.23. Enough? She hoped so. She crossed the street to the small pharmacy. The bell jingled as she entered. Her breathing had worsened, every inhale whistled. She placed the worn prescription slip on the counter. The clerk scanned it and frowned. "That'll be $36. Ava's heart sank. I only have 10 right now. Can I pay the rest Friday? I work at the hospital across the road." "I'm sorry," he said, tone rehearsed. "Policy." She blinked fast, refusing the sting in her eyes. "Please. I just need my inhaler." "Ma'am, I can't. Put it on my account." The voice was low, even, yet it rippled through the room like thunder. Ava turned. He stood in the doorway in a charcoal suit, rain still glistening on his shoulders. Damien Hale, the name on billboards and morning headlines. For a second she thought she was hallucinating, oxygen deprivation, maybe. But the clerk had gone pale. The billionaire stepped closer, his card already out. "Add whatever she needs," he said without looking at the total. Ava's throat tightened, and not from asthma. "You don't have to." He cut her off, tone calm but final. "I want to." She took the inhaler from the counter with trembling hands, whispering, "Thank you." Then, louder, her pride cracking open. "But I didn't ask for charity." The words landed harder than intended. Damien blinked, genuinely thrown. Around them, silence bloomed, even the clerk looked between them, uncertain. He pocketed his card slowly. "Then consider it a loan. I don't borrow from strangers." She lifted her chin, eyes fierce despite the wheeze in her chest. "Especially not ones who think problems disappear when they throw money at them." Something flickered behind his composed mask, a brief flash of guilt, recognition. He stepped back. "You're right," he said quietly. "Sometimes money only makes them worse." The automatic door slid open behind him. Cool air swept through, carrying the scent of rain and sterile perfume. Damien left without another word. Ava stood still, inhaler clutched like a lifeline. The clerk exhaled, muttering, "Do you know who that was?" She did. Everyone did. But she shook her head, pressing the inhaler to her lips and breathing in deep for the first time that day. Across the street, through the tinted window of his car, Damien watched her exhale, watched the tremor in her fingers fade. He told himself it was chance, that he'd forget her face by morning. Yet as the light turned green, he stayed parked, heart knocking like an old engine. If pride stood between you and survival, would you take the help, or walk away? Tell us below. Your answer might say more about you than you think. The next morning, Ava's reflection in the hospital restroom mirror looked like exhaustion wrapped in scrubs. Her eyes were rimmed with fatigue. Her breath still came shallow. She dabbed at her lips with a paper towel and tried to shake the echo of that voice. Low, steady, commanding. She'd replayed the scene 100 times while trying to sleep. Every time she heard him say, "Put it on my account," a cocktail of humiliation and gratitude burned through her chest. Why couldn't he have just walked away like everyone else? A nurse's call from the hallway snapped her back. She forced a smile, slipped the inhaler into her pocket, and went back to the desk. Patients didn't need to see her shaking. Across town, Damien Hale was seated in his car outside Hale Tower, watching the rain bead on the windshield. He hadn't planned to stop by that pharmacy. He'd been on his way to sign a pharmaceutical distribution deal, ironically, one that would have made medications like Ava's inhaler even more expensive. Now, every time he looked at the paperwork on his desk, he saw her face instead, the way her jaw tightened when she said, "I don't borrow from strangers." It wasn't defiance that haunted him, it was the dignity beneath it. The kind of pride that refuses to break, even when the world demands it. He rubbed his temple, exhaling. "You're losing focus," he muttered to himself. By midday, the hospital was chaos. Stretchers rolled through hallways, voices barked orders. Ava stood behind the reception desk when the elevator doors opened and a familiar voice asked, "Excuse me, is Dr. Fields in?" Her head snapped up. Damien Hale, immaculate as ever, eyes scanning the room with calculated calm. She froze, heart thudding. Why is he here? He noticed her almost instantly. Their eyes met across the sterile distance. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, with the composure of a man used to owning every room he entered, Damien walked toward her desk. "Miss Bennet," he said softly, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. She swallowed. "You know my name?" He tilted his head, almost smiling. "You left your prescription slip at the pharmacy." I asked the clerk. Her jaw tightened. "You could have just thrown it away." "I don't throw things away that matter." His tone was calm, almost too calm. Ava blinked. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not. But I remember people who look me in the eye when everyone else looks down." For a moment, the hospital noise faded. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the warmth of his cologne, cedar and something deeper. Ava's chest tightened again, but not from asthma this time. "I have work to do," she said, voice softer than intended. "I know." His eyes lingered. "You shouldn't go without that inhaler again. You scared me yesterday." She frowned. "You? Scared?" He almost laughed, an unfamiliar sound that startled him. "I've seen billion-dollar losses, boardroom meltdowns, even a shareholder try to sue me on stage. None of it felt like that moment watching you struggle to breathe." Something inside her shifted. She wanted to hate him for his money, his ease, his unearned power, but that confession didn't sound like arrogance. It sounded like honesty. Still, she folded her arms. "Don't worry. I won't collapse in your path again. I'd prefer you didn't." A pause. "But if you do, I'd like to be there." He turned to leave, but she stopped him. "Why did you really pay for it?" He hesitated, back still turned. "Because someone once couldn't afford what they needed. And I didn't help them in time." Before she could speak, he was gone. That night, Ava sat on her narrow bed in her one-room apartment, holding the inhaler between her fingers like it was evidence of something bigger than kindness. Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend and co-worker, Lena. Lena, you'll never believe who showed up today. The Damien Hale. You met him? Spill. Ava typed, he's strange, cold, but not entirely heartless. Then deleted it. Instead she wrote, long story. I'll tell you later. She set the phone aside and stared at the ceiling. Her chest was calm for once, but her heart was anything but. Meanwhile, in the quiet of his penthouse, Damien stood by the window, staring at the skyline. The city glittered like 1,000 unsent apologies. He poured himself a glass of water, then hesitated. His reflection in the window looked almost human tonight. He pulled out his sister's old inhaler from a drawer, a relic he could never throw away. The faded blue plastic was cracked, useless, but precious. He turned it in his hands until his knuckles whitened. For the first time in years, he whispered aloud, I'm sorry, Lily. And though no one heard, his chest loosened. The next morning, Ava found a small, neatly folded envelope on her desk at reception. No name, just a note inside. For your medication fund. No strings attached. D.H. She almost smiled, but then frustration surged back. Why couldn't he understand that she didn't want to be rescued? She stuffed the envelope into her pocket and went back to work, determined to ignore it. Yet every time she passed the elevator doors, she half hoped they'd open and reveal him again. Have you ever met someone who saw past your defenses, someone who noticed your pain when you tried to hide it? Share your story in the comments below. The week that followed was chaos. Ava buried herself in 12-hour shifts, extra rounds, overtime paperwork, covering for nurses who called in sick. Anything to drown out thoughts of a man with too many secrets and eyes that seemed to see through her. Each time the elevator chimed, she stiffened. Each time it wasn't him, she hated that a small part of her felt disappointed. By Friday evening, her body felt like a scraped nerve. The city outside was rain-soaked again, streetlights shimmering in puddles like broken stars. She wrapped her coat tighter and began the long walk to the bus stop. Halfway there, a sleek black car slowed beside her. She frowned, stepping closer to the curb. Then a familiar voice called, "You really do prefer walking in storms, don't you?" Her heart skipped. Damien Hale leaned against the car door, rain misting across his tailored coat. "Are you following me now?" she asked, brows raised. He smiled faintly. "Coincidence. My office is 2 blocks away." Then, after a pause, "Can I give you a ride?" She hesitated. "You don't even know where I live." "Then tell me. Or I can keep guessing." Despite herself, she almost laughed. "You don't give up easily, do you? Not when something or someone gets under my skin." Ava looked away quickly. "I'm fine, Mr. Hale." "It's Damien," he corrected gently. "At least when I'm trying not to be a billionaire for 5 minutes." She studied him for a long second, then sighed. "Fine. Just a ride." He opened the door for her, and the warmth of the car wrapped around her like luxury and danger. The scent of leather and cedarwood filled her lungs. She tried to focus on the rain blurring the city outside. "You don't strike me as the type to chase people down in the rain," she said. He glanced at her, one hand on the wheel. "You don't strike me as the type who refuses help when she needs it." She exhaled slowly. "I've learned not to expect help. Expectations hurt." He nodded, eyes softening. "Yeah, they do." The car fell into a silence that wasn't awkward, just heavy with everything unspoken. Ava's building stood old and small, the paint peeling off the walls. Damien parked outside and looked up. "You live here." She stiffened. "Don't judge what you don't understand." "I'm not judging," he said quietly. "I'm wondering how someone so capable ends up fighting the world alone." Her voice cracked slightly. "Because sometimes the world doesn't give you a choice." For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain played its own melody against the windshield. He finally said, "Let me at least take you to dinner tomorrow. No charity. Just conversation." Ava opened the car door, half turned toward him. "You don't owe me anything." "Maybe I don't. But maybe I want to." She hesitated, then smiled, barely. "We'll see." And then she was gone, disappearing into the dim light of her building's stairwell. Damien stayed there for a minute, hands gripping the steering wheel. He'd spent his life making numbers obey, contracts bend, and people fall in line. But Ava Bennett? She made him uncertain. And somehow, that felt like breathing again. The next day, Ava didn't plan to see him. She told herself she was too busy, that she'd forgotten the offer, that billionaires had short attention spans anyway. But at exactly 7 p.m., her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Damien, I'm outside, in case you decided to give dinner a chance." She looked out her window. There he was, leaning casually against the same black car, rain-free tonight, but just as infuriatingly persistent. Her heart stuttered. Against her better judgment, she grabbed her coat. At the restaurant. It wasn't the kind of place she'd ever afford. Glass chandeliers, violin music, waiters who whispered instead of spoke. She felt out of place immediately. "You didn't have to bring me somewhere like this," she muttered. "I didn't," Damien replied. "I brought myself here. You're just the reason it doesn't feel empty." Ava looked up, startled. His tone wasn't smooth, it was honest. "You're bad at small talk," she said, a faint smile playing at her lips. "I don't do small talk," he replied. "I do real." They ate slowly. Between bites, they shared fragments of their lives. His childhood by the lake before money turned love into politics, her dream of becoming a nurse practitioner before her father's illness forced her to drop out of school. For the first time in years, Damien laughed, a deep, genuine laugh that startled nearby tables. Ava couldn't help but laugh too. When the waiter poured water, Damien leaned closer and said quietly, "You make me remember what life felt like before I learned to fake it." Her pulse quickened. "Careful, Mr. Hale. You almost sound human. Maybe you make me want to be." She looked down, cheeks warm. "You're impossible. And yet you're still here." Her eyes lifted to meet his. Maybe that's the problem. When he dropped her home that night, neither wanted to leave. The air between them hummed with everything they weren't ready to admit. As she turned to go, he caught her wrist gently, not possessive, just sincere. "Ava," he said, voice low, "I don't know what this is yet, but I don't want it to stop." Her breath hitched. "Neither do I. But you're from a world that breaks people like me, Damien. Then maybe it's time I start breaking the world instead." Do you believe love can bloom between two people from completely different worlds, or is it doomed from the start? Tell us in the comments. 3 days after that dinner, Ava thought she could return to normal life. Back to her shifts, her routines, her invisibility. But normal vanished the moment a silver car stopped in front of the hospital and he stepped out, Damien Hale, in a navy suit that made the air around him tighten. Every head turned. Cameras clicked. Nurses whispered. He wasn't supposed to be there. And yet, there he was, heading straight for the nurses' station. Ava froze as he approached, the world suddenly holding its breath. He smiled slightly, ignoring the gawking staff. "I told you I owed you dinner," he said softly. "Now I owe you lunch." Her throat went dry. "You shouldn't be here." "Why not?" "Because people talk, Mr. Hale. They already are." He tilted his head. "Let them." Her voice trembled between irritation and something else. "You have no idea what it's like being me. I can't afford rumors." "Then let me help change the story," he said. "Not with words. With truth." Before she could respond, the head nurse, Mrs. Langley, called out from behind the counter, voice sharp, "Miss Bennett, break time is over." Ava sighed. "You see. This is my world, Damien. Rules. limits, reality. He looked at her for a long, loaded second. Then maybe I'll stay until you have 5 minutes of reality left for me. Later that evening, Ava found him waiting in the hospital cafe, sitting among paper cups and vending machines as though it were the Ritz. You really didn't leave? She asked, arms crossed. I said 5 minutes, he said, checking his watch. It's been 4 hours. I'm patient when I care. She rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at her lips. You're impossible. He leaned forward, eyes soft. You said that before. I'm starting to think it's your way of saying you like me. Don't flatter yourself, she muttered, sipping her coffee. But the corners of her mouth betrayed her. He noticed. There it is, he said. That smile. The one that makes me forget what meetings I have tomorrow. Her laughter spilled out, light, free, the kind that caught even her off guard. For a brief moment, she forgot who he was. Forgot the gap between them. Then her phone buzzed. A hospital emergency. Pediatric asthma patient. Critical. She jumped up instantly. Damien followed. You can't go in there, she said. Try me. He watched her work, commanding, calm, fearless. The same fire that had drawn him the first day was burning now, brighter than ever. When the little boy finally stabilized, Ava's shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Damien handed her a bottle of water. You saved him. She smiled faintly. Teamwork. I just guided the storm. You guided mine too, he said quietly. She froze. Their eyes met, a breath apart, the noise of the hospital fading into silence. Then, as if waking from a dream, she stepped back. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because you mean them. And I might start believing you. Later that night, rain again. The power flickered in her building. She lit a candle and sat by the window, the city lights painting her face in gold and shadow. Then, another knock. Damien. Soaked. Shirt clinging to him, tie gone, eyes stormy. Did you follow me again? She asked, startled. He laughed breathlessly. No. The power's out in half the block. I came to check if you were safe. She crossed her arms. You could have called. I did. You didn't answer. I was fine. I wasn't. Something inside her cracked. You can't keep doing this, showing up like some savior. I don't need to be saved. I'm not saving you, he said, stepping closer. I'm saving myself. Their breath mingled, electric, uncertain. You make me forget I'm supposed to be untouchable, Ava, he said softly. And for once, I don't want to remember. Her eyes softened. And if I let you in, then I'll finally know what home feels like. She trembled, torn between fear and desire. Finally, she whispered, stay. But not because of pity. He smiled faintly. Never pity. Only because of you. That night, they sat together on the couch, talking until dawn. Not about money or titles but about life. Her favorite songs. His regrets. Her fear of losing people. His fear of never being seen for who he really was. At one point, she fell asleep against his shoulder. He didn't move. He just looked at her, quiet, reverent, like a man realizing that love doesn't come with a price tag. If someone who once seemed unreachable started showing up for you, would you trust it, or push them away before they could leave? Share your thoughts below. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window blinds like hesitant hope. Ava stirred awake on the couch to find a note on the coffee table. Had to take a call. Didn't want to wake you. P.S. You snore a little. D. A small laugh escaped her lips. She folded the note and tucked it inside her nursing journal, as if it meant more than she dared admit. For the next few weeks, Damien and Ava became an unexpected rhythm. Coffee breaks turned into lunch meetings. Text messages became phone calls. And every time his name flashed on her screen, her chest fluttered, not out of need, but recognition. Still, a shadow lingered. Something in Damien's eyes whenever she mentioned family or love, a flicker of pain that he hid behind half-smiles and deflections. Ava was on duty when a private medical team rushed into the ER. 2 guards in black suits, a frantic assistant, and a stretcher bearing an elderly woman struggling to breathe. "Move her to Trauma 2. Ava barked, taking charge. The assistant caught her arm. "Please be careful, that's Mrs. Hale." Her heart stopped. "Your mother." Damien appeared seconds later, his face pale, controlled but shaking beneath the surface. When he saw Ava, something eased in his shoulders. "You're here." "I've got her," Ava said firmly. "She'll be fine." The night stretched into chaos, oxygen masks, medications, and whispered prayers. Ava worked through the storm like a soldier in white scrubs, her focus unshakable. Damien stood in the corner, eyes fixed on the woman who had once been his world. When it was over and Mrs. Hale was stable, Ava found him sitting outside the ICU window, elbows on his knees, staring at nothing. "She's okay," Ava said softly. He didn't look up. "You'd think a man with everything could stop death from knocking." Ava sat beside him. "Money doesn't make you God, Damien." "No," he said bitterly. "Just makes you guilty for surviving." She turned to him. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then the dam broke. "When I was 24, I had a sister," he said, voice low. "Emma. She had asthma, worse than anything I'd ever seen. One night, she had an attack. My mother called me, but I was in London, chasing a merger deal. I thought I'd call back in an hour." He exhaled sharply, his jaw trembling. "By the time I did, she was gone." Ava's heart clenched. "Oh, Damien." He swallowed hard. "I bought companies. I built towers. I turned grief into glass and steel, but it didn't fill the silence she left." Ava's voice trembled. "That's why you paid for my inhaler that day." He nodded, eyes glistening. "You sounded like her. Desperate but trying to pretend you weren't. And when I saw you struggling to breathe, something inside me broke open." Silence fell between them, raw, heavy, sacred. Ava reached for his hand. "You couldn't save your sister. But you're saving yourself now, by letting someone care about you." He looked at her, stunned. "And what about you, Ava? Who couldn't you save?" Tears welled in her eyes. "My dad. He was everything to me. He worked as a janitor just to keep me in school. But his lungs, he had asthma too. One night, the pharmacy wouldn't give him his refill because he was short $10. He told them he'd come back in the morning. He didn't make it through the night." Damien's breath caught. "That's why I was at that counter that day," she said, voice shaking. "Same inhaler. Same number. I promised myself I'd never let someone I love die over $10 again." For a long moment, the air between them held both their ghosts, the sister he lost, the father she couldn't save. Then Damien whispered, "You and I, we were broken by the same storm. And maybe," she said softly, "we were meant to find shelter in each other." The world outside the hospital blurred into lights and quiet thunder. Damien turned toward her, eyes full of things words couldn't touch. She didn't move when he leaned closer. Didn't flinch when his hand brushed her cheek. The kiss was soft at first, hesitant, trembling, like they were afraid to wake the ghosts between them. Then deeper. Real. Two wounded souls finding the courage to breathe again. When they pulled apart, Ava whispered, "That was reckless." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I'm finally learning to live." Can two people with scars from the same kind of loss truly heal each other, or do they risk reopening wounds that never close? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For the first time in months, the hospital felt like sunlight instead of survival. Ava moved through the halls with a faint, unexplainable glow. Even the other nurses noticed. "You've been smiling a lot lately," said Jenna, her best friend at the ward. "Don't tell me the billionaire's got a heart and you found it?" Ava flushed. "It's not like that." "Oh, it's exactly like that," Jenna teased, laughing. Just don't break the man before you fix him. Ava smiled softly, but inside, she knew this was different. Damien wasn't just a man with money, he was a man with wounds that matched hers. Meanwhile, Damien was changing too, and the world noticed. His boardroom temper had cooled. His assistants whispered about how he now brought coffee for the interns and asked about their families. He even surprised his driver by walking himself into the hospital just to drop off a lunch. When Ava saw the neatly packed container with her name on it, she couldn't hide the smile. "You made this?" she asked. "Don't sound so surprised," Damien said. "I googled it. Something called jollof rice." Ava's laughter rang out like music. "You made jollof rice?" He grinned, proud and self-deprecating. "Well, my kitchen staff supervised, but I stirred it twice." "That counts for effort," she said warmly. "And for someone like you, that's practically a miracle." That afternoon, they sat in the hospital garden, two people who shouldn't belong together, but somehow fit perfectly in the quiet. Ava took off her shoes, letting her toes touch the grass. Damien did the same, awkwardly. She chuckled. "I never thought I'd see a billionaire barefoot." He looked at her and smiled. "I never thought I'd feel this free." She leaned back against the bench, eyes half closed. "It's strange, isn't it? You spend your whole life chasing something, and then peace comes from the simplest thing. Grass under your feet, someone beside you. Someone who doesn't care about your money," he added softly. Her eyes opened. "You finally believe that?" "I do," he said. "Because you make me forget I ever had any." The silence that followed was tender, full of words neither dared to say. A few days later, Ava was called into the hospital's administrative office. She walked in nervously, only to see the chief medical officer waiting with an envelope in hand. "Miss Bennett," he said, smiling. "Congratulations. Your nursing scholarship application for the practitioner program has been approved, full funding." Ava blinked in disbelief. "There must be some mistake. I never." The officer raised a hand. "It's anonymous. Someone out there believes in you." Her heart pounded. She didn't need to guess who. That evening, she confronted Damien outside his office. "You paid for my scholarship," she said, voice trembling. He looked up from his desk, surprised she'd come. "I thought it would make you happy." "It did," she said, eyes glistening. "But why not tell me?" "Because it wasn't about me," he replied softly. "You deserve to rise without anyone saying you were lifted." Ava stepped closer. "You really don't see it, do you?" "See what?" "That you're already the man you were trying to become." For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he rose from his chair and reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Over the next week, they built something fragile but real. Late-night walks after her shifts. Coffee at his penthouse balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. The way her laughter filled the silence he'd once feared. He would read her poetry, she'd mock his terrible accent. He'd watch her tie her hair up and think, how could this feel more valuable than gold? One night, as they stood by the glass window overlooking the city, Ava whispered, "You know what I realized?" "What?" he murmured, his arm around her waist. "You make me feel like I can breathe even when the world feels heavy." He smiled. "And you make me want to live even when I thought I'd already done everything." Their foreheads touched, and for a heartbeat, everything was still. But perfect moments never last. Love, fragile and new, always draws the world's eyes. And in the distance, camera flashes were waiting. Reporters. Headlines. Scandal. Billionaire CEO's secret affair with hospital nurse. The photo of him holding her hand outside the ER spread like wildfire. Ava's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Damien's PR team panicked. The board was furious. And in that rising storm, their peace began to crack. Would you fight for love if the entire world started judging it, or would you let it go to protect your peace? Drop your thoughts below. The morning it happened, Ava woke to chaos. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages, missed calls, and one devastating headline splashed across every major site. Billionaire CEO Damien Holt's secret love affair with struggling nurse. Photos emerge. The article was merciless. It painted her as a social climber, a schemer who used her illness and charm to seduce the city's most powerful bachelor. Worse still, the hospital administration called her in immediately. "Ava, we're sorry," her supervisor said gently, "but this publicity, it's too much. We have to suspend you until things settle." Ava's voice trembled. "But I didn't do anything wrong." "I know, dear. But hospitals rely on reputation, and the press is vicious." She walked out of that office numb, feeling like the floor had been ripped from beneath her. At the same time, Damien sat in his penthouse surrounded by lawyers and PR strategists. They all spoke over one another. Legal jargon, financial exposure, corporate image. "Sir, your board is furious. Investors are threatening withdrawal if you don't clarify the nature of this relationship." "Clarify?" he asked coldly. "You mean lie?" "Sir," his advisor pressed, "if you confirm you're in a relationship with her, the press will destroy you. But if you deny it..." Damien's jaw tightened. "Then I destroy her." For the first time in years, he didn't know what to do. The man who always had a plan, now trapped between his career and the woman who'd taught him to feel again. That evening, Ava showed up at his office, rain dripping from her coat, eyes red. The guards tried to stop her, but Damien waved them off. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I lost my job," she replied, her voice shaking. "My reputation. My peace. All because I met you." He flinched. "I'm trying to fix this. By letting them say those things about me," she snapped. "Or by pretending I meant nothing?" Damien stood, frustration boiling. "You don't understand how ruthless this world is, Ava. If I speak, they'll crucify us both." "I never asked you to protect me with silence," she shouted, tears spilling. "I asked you to stand beside me." The room went still. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His silence was her answer. Ava turned away. "You know, I thought you were brave. Turns out, you're just another man afraid to lose what doesn't even make you happy." She walked out, and this time, he didn't follow. The next weeks were cruel. Ava couldn't find work. Every interview ended with polite rejection. She sold her few possessions, surviving on instant noodles and old savings. Even the scholarship program she'd been accepted into quietly postponed her participation. Meanwhile, Damien spiraled. He tried to bury himself in work, but his focus was gone. The boardroom felt hollow, the deals meaningless. He saw her face in every quiet space, her laughter echoing in the kitchen, her scent lingering in the hallways. One night, he sat in the dark, scrolling through the article that destroyed her. Each word felt like a dagger. And there, at the bottom, was a photo. Ava, leaving the hospital, her head down, clutching a single inhaler. He remembered that first night, the trembling $10 bill on the counter. How her eyes had still held dignity even in fear. And he realized, he'd failed her again. A week later, the board issued an ultimatum. Either you issue a public statement distancing yourself from her, or you step down as CEO. He looked at them, men who'd never known compassion, only control. "Then I stepped down," he said simply. The room exploded in protest, but Damien stood firm. For the first time in his life, he felt peace in choosing love over power, even if it cost him everything. Ava's goodbye letter. 2 days later, a letter arrived at his doorstep. The handwriting was familiar. "Damien, I never hated you. Not even when the world turned cruel. You gave me moments I never thought I'd have, safety, laughter, the feeling that I was seen. But I can't live in your shadow anymore. I need to find myself again, far from the noise, far from your name. Please don't look for me. Ava." He folded the letter slowly, his eyes wet. For the first time, the man who had everything realized how little it all meant without her. Would you walk away from love to protect someone's peace, even if it meant losing everything you built? Comment your thoughts below. The world moved on, but Damien couldn't. It had been 2 months since Ava's letter, 2 months since she'd vanished like a shadow swallowed by dawn. In the newspapers, another CEO took over his position. His name no longer commanded rooms, and strangely, he didn't care. He rented a small house by the ocean, where the wind howled against glass windows and the sea was endless gray. Every morning, he brewed coffee he never finished, staring at the waves that reminded him of her breathing. Shallow, steady, fighting to stay alive. He thought success was power, but now he knew, it was peace. And peace had her name all over it. One morning, while checking old mail, he came across a letter from the local clinic he'd quietly donated to after leaving his company. Mr. Holt, thank you for your continued support. Because of your contributions, we were able to fund emergency inhalers for over 200 low-income patients last month. He stared at the words until they blurred. The memory of Ava clutching her $10 flashed through his mind. Her trembling hand. Her quiet courage. He realized something. Helping her had awakened something buried, the desire to make things better, even in small ways. So he began volunteering at the clinic under an alias. David, not Damien Holt, Billionaire. He scrubbed floors, carried boxes, and helped patients fill out insurance forms. He wasn't there to be seen. He was there to be human again. Meanwhile, in a small coastal town 3 hours away, Ava found work in a modest community clinic. No tabloids, no whispers, just people who needed care and couldn't afford it. She lived simply, saving every cent, still using the same old inhaler. Some nights she'd stand by her window, looking out at the ocean. She missed him, painfully, silently, but told herself that missing him didn't mean she should go back. She had found her own rhythm, fragile but real. Then, one rainy afternoon, the clinic held a community event. Free medical checkups funded by a local sponsor. Ava smiled, organizing paperwork. That was when she heard a voice she hadn't heard in months. "Excuse me, do you know where I can donate more medical supplies?" Her pen froze mid-air. She turned, and there he was. Standing by the doorway in a simple gray hoodie, hair damp from rain, eyes searching. He looked different, softer, older, stripped of all armor. "Damien," she breathed. He smiled faintly. "David, actually. Just a volunteer here." Neither moved at first. The room around them buzzed, laughter, chatter, life, but they stood locked in a quiet, trembling universe. Ava finally spoke. "Why are you here?" His voice cracked. "Because you asked me not to look for you. So I did everything else instead. I tried to forget. Tried to move on. But every time someone asked why I was helping, I thought of you." Her eyes filled. "You gave up everything." He shook his head gently. "I didn't give it up. I traded it for something real." They stood there, rain softly tapping the windows. She wanted to forgive him, but the wound still ached. "Do you regret it?" she whispered. He stepped closer, his voice raw. "Only the part where I let you walk away." That night, he waited outside the clinic as she locked up. The rain had stopped, replaced by fog that made the world small and quiet. He said softly, "I don't want to ruin what you've built here. But if there's any part of you that's still—" She interrupted him, trembling. "You think you can just show up and fix everything with an apology?" "No," he said. "But I can show up, and never stop showing up again." She looked down, tears streaking her cheeks. "You broke me, Damien. And you healed me, Ava." The silence between them hummed with everything unspoken: regret, love, fear, forgiveness. "Finally," she whispered, "then maybe we both deserve a second chance." He reached out, just barely brushing her hand. She didn't pull away. In that fragile touch, forgiveness began. Not loud, not perfect, but real. Would you give someone who broke your heart a second chance if they truly changed? Or once trust is gone, is it gone forever? Share your thoughts below. The next few weeks at the coastal clinic felt different. Damien came every day, fixing shelves, organizing supplies, sweeping floors, and sometimes just quietly sitting by the door while Ava worked. He never tried to win her back with gifts or promises. He just showed up. And that's what slowly began to heal her, not his words, but his presence. Each day he came, not as the billionaire who once rescued her, but as a man willing to start over, humbly, honestly, hand in hand with ordinary people. One evening, after the clinic closed, they walked along the shore together. The wind was cool, the horizon painted in fading gold. Ava's hair fluttered across her face as she asked softly, "Do you ever miss it? The empire, the power." He smiled. "Sometimes. But it was noise. You were quiet. You were real." She glanced at him, her lips trembling with the ghost of a smile. "And what if one day you want it back?" "I've already got everything I ever wanted," he said, eyes holding hers. "I just didn't know it until I lost it." Weeks later, the clinic hosted a health drive in a low-income neighborhood nearby. A long line of people waited to receive free medication, funded by Damien's new charity foundation, the Holt Breath Initiative. Ava managed the desk, organizing prescriptions, when a little girl approached, clutching a $10 bill. "Miss," she said shyly, "my mom said this might not be enough for my inhaler." Ava froze. The moment was too familiar. Her heart skipped. She smiled gently, kneeling down to meet the girl's eyes. "Keep your money, sweetheart. Breathing shouldn't cost you your peace." She handed the inhaler to her, glancing toward Damien across the room. He was watching, eyes glistening, smiling faintly. That one look said everything. "We've come full circle." That night, they sat outside the clinic under a blanket of stars. The distant hum of the ocean was their only witness. Ava spoke first. "You know, the day I met you, I thought you were arrogant. The kind of man who'd never understand what it's like to need something and not have it." He chuckled softly. "I was that man. Until you taught me the cost of breath." She turned to him, eyes shimmering. "And you taught me that kindness doesn't have to come from pity." They fell silent again, not awkwardly, but comfortably. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A single, folded $10 bill. Crisp, but slightly worn. He placed it in her hand. "For the inhaler," he whispered, smiling. "The one that changed everything." She laughed through her tears, clutching it tight. "You kept it." "I framed it in my heart long before I kept it in my pocket." The waves crashed softly against the rocks below as he leaned in, gently brushing his lips against hers. It wasn't rushed or desperate, it was the kind of kiss that felt like coming home. Every wound, every loss, every night of missing each other dissolved in that single breath they shared. When they finally pulled away, Ava whispered, "So, what happens now?" He smiled. "Now, we build something real. Together. No boardrooms, no headlines, just life." 1 year later, the Holt Breath Initiative had opened 5 free community clinics across the country. Ava was the lead nurse, Damien the quiet founder who refused interviews. Their days were filled with laughter, their nights with peace. They'd often tell their volunteers, "Love doesn't always come grand. Sometimes, it starts with a $10 bill and a heartbeat that refuses to quit." And every evening before locking up, Damien would walk to the donation box, drop in a folded bill, and whisper, "For her." If love gave you a second chance after heartbreak, would you trust it again, or protect your heart forever? Comment below what you believe real redemption in love looks like.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.